Hi, welcome to Just Out of Curiosity, a podcast that talks about sex and sexuality from the lens of a sex-positive brown woman that has a fascination with alternative or non-conventional lifestyles. My name is Shelly D, and I am that sex-positive brown woman. Over the course of several episodes, I'm excited to dive into topics that titillate my interests and make me ask my guests questions just out of curiosity. And so my curiosity today leads to dating. I'll just put it out there. It's hella worse dating now than before. The world is at your fingertips if you choose online dating, but let me tell you, it's about a 50% chance you'll come across someone you've seen recently. Maybe a year ago, even a couple years ago, there are no changes there. I'll come across some new profiles and ponder for a bit whether I'll actually connect or if it will be a waste of time, only to realize I just spent 15 minutes thinking of what dating that person would be like before even swiping right on them. And swiping right doesn't even actually mean anything unless they swiped right on me. So I finally swipe right and don't get the notification. Whatever, it's their loss. But if I do get that notification, I barely message right away. And if I'm using Bumble, there's a high percentage chance I'll forget to message before that 24-hour period expires. But then I force myself sometimes to message someone and they respond and it's fun and refreshing and you get along so well that you just finally have to meet. Passing the online portion is about 40% of this dating hurdle. It feels weird to say this out loud, but I don't really have a lot of experience in relationships, and it becomes pretty apparent when I'm struggling with dealing with feelings and emotions. But when you find someone that you want to break through all those hurdles and then some, how on earth do you navigate that world? When I first started recording episodes and putting this all together, I was dating, mostly single. However, something happened and I met someone, and it's been a whirlwind couple of months, literally couple of months. So I figured, why not bring him on here so we can deep dive this relationship of ours. Hi, Jesse.
Hi, Shelly.
This is interesting because I don't think I've ever had this conversation with you, talking through microphones, listening in earphones, headphones.
It's true, but we've had this conversation so much.
I know we
never
have.
stopped talking about this.
Well, the interesting thing is that our relationship is not even 3 months, but I feel like I know you since forever.
Why do you feel that way?
I don't know. There's something about you and your personality that kind of just matches mine. And maybe you were like the first guy on online dating apps that actually gave me a chance and stuck it out with me.
Is that really what happened?
I don't know. I feel like
lucky boy.
You were definitely the first person that I met. I put myself out there with you, but I continue to put myself out there with you. And when I met you, I was just like, I'd be stupid to let this person go. So I'm not going to, and I'm going to make it very obvious that like, I want you and I'm going to do whatever I can to keep you without appearing to be a crazy stalker girl.
Yeah, like your viewers won't be able to see me blush over that, but I don't know, really? Why?
I think I've been single for so long. Like I have dated so many guys, and my dating history is different from yours, but kind of similar to an extent. But you kind of meet a lot of duds, and when you meet a good one, then you kind of just, you know what it is that you want from all the things that you didn't get before, and all the things that you're like, I wish that this guy would have been like this, or I don't feel as comfortable with this person because of that. So that when I met you, it just made sense. And I knew that I didn't want anything else.
Well, I guess I shouldn't be asking you questions since it's your podcast. And I can't say that I feel differently or felt differently. So yeah, touche.
I have been single for a very, very long time. I mean, like I have just perpetually dated. I'm like I don't know what the right word is. I've always dated, and I know my history, but tell our listeners and remind me again of your history.
I think that I've been a serial dater as well.
Serial dater, that's what it's called.
I think I've been a serial dater as well, with the notable exception of when I was married and with a partner for about 9 years. Otherwise, I've always been dating. I've always been kind of looking for my kind of relationship, my kind of person. I think we both relate to the term serial dater or serial dating. I think that and while I guess we're on the same page in terms of monogamy or being monogamous, I think that we've taken, obviously, I don't know, very similar approaches, and we've just been in different places, different times, right?
I feel like to be honest, I feel like I was a lost soul. I don't think I ever really knew how to be in a relationship properly. And so I just kind of like fluttered around, and I would use the excuse of, I'm a free bird. Don't contain me. Don't do this. I just want to be who I am. But I think ultimately, if I look down deep, one of the things that I had to like figure out when I started seeing you and you made me talk about my emotions, which I do not like at all, was that I realized that I really felt like a lost soul. Kind of just had no idea what to look for and who to look for and how to operate in a relationship.
Yeah, and I think that was relatively noticeable. And I think that for anyone that's been listening to your podcast, this is at least the second or third time it's come up that you don't like being vulnerable. You don't like talking about yourself, which is ironic for somebody that's on a podcast talking about something so personal. And, at the same time, you're generally turning the microphone on your guests and you're generally refraining from talking about yourself. So it's apt, I suppose.
Well, I think I also learned how to talk about things that weren't super personal to me. And I've learned everything that I've talked about on this podcast. I've been thinking of doing this since 2020, and it's 2 years later. And I've come to terms with what I'm going to talk about and the fact that I can. And this stuff is all stuff that I'm very okay with talking about with anyone. Now, if you were to like ask me something super, super personal or super serious, and I haven't thought about how I would talk about that to people, and I don't even really know how to articulate it, that's when I would really be really uncomfortable with my emotions.
Right. Like when someone asks you how you're feeling. But no,
it's too much. It's too much of a personal question for me.
I know. But if somebody asks some fine or some personal detail about a specific sexual event or conquest, it's very different.
Yeah.
But that's a big thing though. Like that's a breakdown between the physical and the emotional. And one of the things that we've talked about so much for me is that it is so difficult for me to kind of believe that physical engagement without believing the emotional sincerity behind it. And, and to back up and kind of to loop back with my experience with dating, I think that I've always just been drawn to finding that connection. And I don't know if that's because I moved around so much when I was little or whatever it is. I'm sure there's so many reasons why, right? Psychologically, but it is who I am. And yes, a big part of that connection is sexual and physical. And a huge part of that connection is emotional. And I think after, as a kid, you move around so many times, you go to so many different schools, so many different cities and towns, and you see so many people that have these lifelong friends, these real sincere relationships and friendships, all friendships, all relations are relationships in one way or another. And as much as you may even strive to find like a very close friend, in my opinion, there's something about having a close partnership that's always even closer, you know, it's more important. It's something that, like, it's somebody that you can share anything with. And that's kind of what I've always looked for.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you think marriage helped you find that a little bit?
Marriage helped me refine that a little bit. So marriage is that connection. Like, you make that commitment to somebody, and that's supposed to be part of it. That's the point, is that you have that commitment to each other. You're supposed to be able to, you know, talk to each other about anything, you know, like any good relationship should be. I think for myself is that I recognized that I was with somebody that I could have that really good, you know, a very good emotional connection with, but then, and not necessarily the entirety of the emotional connection that I wanted to have. In the same way with the physical connection, like a very good one, but just not quite on the money, not exactly where, you know, I'd be able to be completely myself and not be untruthful about my being, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the hardest part in general, is being truthful with your being with someone else.
And to yourself. But ultimately, when you share your life with somebody, being true to yourself is, you know, it also entails being truthful to that person that you spend so much time with, that you sleep with every night and wake up with every morning.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a shared honesty and a shared truth. And ultimately, if you don't have that 100% with that person, it's going to keep you up at night, and you're going to be ruminating about it. And it's, once there's cracks, it'll start to, you know, get worse, or whatever it is for somebody. That's what made me refine
Fair.
what it is that I was looking for in a relationship. Unfortunately, in such a serious relationship, where in a marriage, you know, families get involved, expectations are there. If you break up, all those expectations aren't met.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a huge emotional investment for people. And so, you know, nobody wants that. But ultimately, if you look at the silver lining, what you learn about it, what you learn about yourself, not to say you know a lot, you don't.
No.
But one can learn a lot about themselves in that experience. You can choose to. In the same way you've chosen to learn what you have from all of your experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I learned something different. I had a different journey that kind of got me to some of the same places you did. But I think the problem with dating, so it's interesting. I was dating someone about 2 years ago, and I always told people when I dated them, you know, you have the question of like, what are you looking for in someone? I would always be like, well, I just want to kind of like get to know you first. And if I like hanging out with you, then I want to spend more, like I'll spend more time with you, and then kind of like progress that as that goes along. And this guy, I'll use the nickname, the plumber. It felt very weird. I was dating him, and he expressed interest in me, and I expressed interest in him. I'd see him a couple times a week. And when I wanted to progress more, he kept dropping the like, oh, but we're casual. When we met, we were casual. He kept saying that we were casual so much that I was just like, oh, great. Now I'm in this position again. And I didn't even know that I was going to be in this position. I didn't want to be in this position. I'm trying. And I never really thought that there was anything wrong with what I was doing. And it's really weird that I think like COVID and being by myself for those 2 years, it really made me like reflect on a lot of things. And I would always spend a lot of time saying, I think guys are messed up, or I think guys don't want to commit to anything. And it was like a really hard thing for me to look in the mirror and say, maybe it was me that didn't know what to do. But I think you coming from a marriage, you kind of have to force yourself to, in your words, like when you say refine what it is that you're looking for, no, like not being able to be true with yourself, that kind of hits harder because you're with someone. And then when you break up with them or get divorced, it's a much more real thing. And it kind of, I don't know, I feel like there's more impact. Whereas me just dating someone that comes in for 3 months, like comes in and out of my life for 3 months, it's really hard to reflect on that without me thinking that there may be something wrong with them instead of me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you can look that way both ways on any perspective. In my opinion, a lot can be grounded on the basis of how you predicate that relationship. So if it is something where you start with a very casual thing, where it's declared casual. And maybe that, maybe the definition of that is we're not getting emotions involved. Kissing is nothing more than part of sex. We're able to see other people. Usually that's a carte blanche for we're never going to move past this unless for some reason something pivots and you become inseparable. At least in my experience, right? And most people I know, because I don't even want to say guys, I don't personally like making this a gender thing, because as much as we are driven to have certain predispositions by society, yes, guys tend to be certain ways, women tend to be certain ways. I also think that any guy is capable of being a certain way. Any woman is capable and allowed to be any certain way as well. And definitely in any relationship where, what is communicated is this is an open, casual thing. I think it's actually harder to move out of that casual zone to, a relationship zone than it is to move from that casual zone to, any kind of friend zone. The friend is out of it.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. So I just think that often if you know what kind of relationship you're looking for in the beginning, it's worth obviously laying that down and establishing it, which I think that you did. I think that when you realized that circumstances changed, you became the person in the relationship that caught feelings when the other one didn't. And that's like any relationship that's casual until it's not, until one person stops feeling as casual about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think it was just I was ending up in a lot of those. And so it made me wonder if it was me.
And maybe it was. Like, were you ever looking for a real relationship? Were you ever looking to really share yourself with somebody?
Well, I mean, I wanted a relationship, but I feel like I just was never good at sharing myself. I'm not good at letting people into my life, because I always have to be like strong, stoic Shelly. She has to like always know what's up. She always has to be funny. She always has to be smart. But then I guess I was never really letting anyone in because I was always having that front.
Yeah, but at the same time, like,
wait, this is weird. I'm supposed to be asking you questions.
That's
and we're talking about me. I really wanted. Do you want to finish whatever you're going to say?
I was going to say some of those things are what I appreciate about you. That you are strong, not necessarily stoic, but
that might have been an exaggeration.
Maybe. But to your credit, a lot of those qualities about you, I think, are what really attracted me to you in the first place, which is honesty and sincerity.
You also, I guess it's the philosophy major in you that really, really questions why certain things happen. I don't know. It just kind of helps. It makes you kind of the person that I always wanted to be with too.
And it's true. Like I am deeply analytical. I try to be, well, I don't try to be, I just am. And I'm somewhat philosophical. Now, that's not a brag.
No, it makes you get real deep into like the makings of how things work.
Well, along the lines of what I care about or what I've been looking for, it's the why, right? Why would you want to do this? Why would you want to be physical? Why would you want that emotional connection?
And truthfully, I've never really thought about the why so much before.
Right. And your reasoning aside, I think it's worth considering why that's important to some people. And if that hasn't been important to you in the past, it's all right. For me, it's the thing that through whatever my journey has been, it's what I've learned to understand about myself, what matters to me. And for yourself on your journey, you've come to understand a lot of the things that you want, that you like, that you dislike, that you have a disdain for or an affinity for. Your journey has brought you to a place at this time where you recognize qualities in me in the same way that I recognize qualities in you. And yeah, it's a crazy time for dating. Like you said at the beginning, this has been such a difficult thing. And aside from how refreshing it has been for our relationship in the midst of all of this, it's been terribly confusing and frustrating. And, you know, I know one thing that you wanted to talk about was the experience of somebody that basically just gets dropped into
Well, yeah,
this
because
dating world
so you said you were married for 9 years.
with someone
so
for 9 years. Yeah.
You were with someone for 9 years. And so before you started dating them, was there Tinder?
No, Tinder didn't exist.
Oh my God. And then when you...
I lived on a Caribbean island where even if Tinder did exist, I think there
You
was
didn't
like
need
one
to.
smartphone. I think there was one iPhone at the time, and Android phones hadn't come out. So there was no dating apps. There was dating websites like there had been for years, right?
Yeah.
Plenty of Fish and I don't know, OkCupid or whatever those were. And I think that anyone that was serious about dating dabbled in those. And I did in university, let's say 2003, 2004. And there was a terrible stigma about online dating.
Oh, yeah. Oh my
Like-
God. There was Lava Life.
Yeah, all of those. And, you know, at that time, it would be, I remember actually going on a date with somebody that I met on a website. And she said, if, you know, this is just a date, but if it progresses to anything beyond this, our story is we met doing this.
Yeah, that was a very common thinking back in the day.
Yeah, you
It
couldn't.
still is to a certain extent.
Oh, it is. It's only becoming far more socially acceptable to say that you've met somebody on a dating app because frankly, statistically, chances are you did.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me right now. I'm not that kind of guest. But last time I remember reading something, it's like 2 and 3 relationships in the Western society start on a dating app these days.
I can
Like
see
it's
that.
disproportionately become something of ultimately a means that I thought I would, I guess, an environment that I thought I would thrive in. I've always been like a computer nerd. I've always been what I consider a technologist. I've always been very tech savvy. And I remember when I started dating my ex-wife, who I appreciate very much, I remember thinking, wow, it's so interesting. All of my friends that still live in Canada and everything, they're all using dating apps and they're meeting people like that. And ergo, women and everybody are on dating apps and it's become a more socially acceptable thing. And if only it was back when I was still doing this, I would have loved that. Why were there negative stigmas about this when I was in high school and university experimenting so much compared to, you know, now when I'm in a monogamous long-term relationship with somebody and I'd have friends and they'd be talking to people online and I'd be a little jealous because it seemed so easy. And then I remember obviously when I got out of my relationship and, you know, tried hopping on Tinder and Bumble and then just becoming perpetually disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
And the grass is not always greener.
No, it's not.
Yeah. It's, you know, like when people talk about how you have to scroll through Netflix.
Oh God, making a decision
for
on
a
what to
long
watch.
Yeah. Like when you have to watch, like basically spend longer than the duration of watching a feature length film just browsing.
Yeah, that's what dating's like.
That's kind of what dating's like, only like online dating. And by that terminology, I mean just like swiping.
Yeah.
And then maybe you find something you want to watch, and then there's a good chance that it's not available in your country.
Oh my God, you could just sum up the entire intro with that analogy. Amazing.
There you go. It just takes a little bit. But that's kind of what online dating is now. We think that it's going to be so much more worthwhile or that you're going to find somebody that you really connect to so much more because, you know, the numbers are there and the filters are there and the qualifications are there and you want to find someone that's just this way. But honestly, it's just a sea of lost people.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem. You're looking for the right person, but it's a very superficial app that you You curate 5 pictures of yourself, most of the time selfies in the gym or in the car, you know?
Depending on your gender, sure.
Well, I only know what I see. And that's partly the reason why I swiped right on you, is because you had 0 selfies. It just became monotonous. Like you're swiping and you just see the same type of person over and over and over again. It's the same pictures over and over and over again. And then you finally find someone that has something slightly different. You have personality. And that ultimately, more than anything, is what I'm looking for when I'm trying to date someone. And you did have that. But that's the problem. There's just so much of the same thing out there that how do you know what you have? It's so superficial. And the filters only make it worse because you think that the filters are helping you, but the filters are just like, yeah, now I'm going to pick and curate my ideal person that I think I want to be with. But it's just based on a couple of pictures and maybe the way someone answered some questions that you think that this is the person that you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's book covers. It's book covers as far as the eye can see. You're in the library and you have to actually read a book to get to know it. So like everything in this information age, which is so quickly shared and disseminated, it's a reminder that there are some things that you can't just kind of judge by the cover of. You can't just figure out or learn by a headline. You still have to take the time to really get to know somebody. You have to take the time to really make that connection and make that engagement with somebody. And it's not to say that you can't do it over texting, you know, especially at a time where we've had so many people that have to be locked down for so long. That has been a lifeline to get to know people and have a social interaction. But I guess to the point that I'm making is that you can be a fair weather, you know, dater. You can meet people casually, you can get together with them, you can only go so deep. And that's fine for the casual. And it's the same as if all that you're interested in doing is just scrolling and swiping, you're free to see what's out there. But of course, when you want to discover more and see if there is something really there, obviously you've got to put that time in. I think you and I had a very quick recognition and connection, but obviously, and as I've pushed you ever so undelicately, you do have to go deep. You do have to find out the why. You do have to find out the motivations and stuff. If you're looking for that deep, good connection, you have to put that time in. You have to talk. You have to communicate.
But not everyone does that though. Like you were the first person that I met that actually asked me more of those questions, or you weren't satisfied with the surface level answers that I gave you. So that was also the other thing. I've never found anyone that really like pushed me to answer questions or even just bothered to ask questions more than like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? Where do you want to travel next on your vacation? You know, it's the same kind of questions that you get.
And to be fair, I don't think that's one of the reasons you like me, because if anything, that made you far more uncomfortable with me.
But I think that actually is the reason why I like you more, is because as much as it's uncomfortable for me to talk about this stuff, I know that is my biggest caveat. And I know that I need someone who is patient enough, especially from my first relationships when I was 19 and 20. I ended up in relationships with guys that I should probably have never been with had I just dated them instead of just like going straight to relationship because they wanted it. And I kind of wanted a relationship at the beginning, not knowing what I was getting myself into. And I felt like it was just very forced. And I felt like there was a lot of things that I didn't know about myself. How I deal with conflict. And we would get into fights and I would just kind of shut down and not say anything. And they would just kind of yell at me and I wouldn't know what to say because I didn't want to talk. And then they would get angry with me for not talking and then they just leave. Or I would say, you know what, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And that would be the end of the argument. And I never felt comfortable and in a safe enough space to express myself. And I knew I started dating someone afterwards that was patient with me and actually allowed me it forced me to talk more. And I realized that I needed that more than someone that I was attracted to sexually. And so one of the things that I liked about you, and I still like about you, is that you force me to talk, but you also are patient enough and give me the space to be able to express myself. Because I know it's one of the hardest things that I can do.
And apparently you like me sexually.
Yeah. I mean, and then sexuality in dating is another thing altogether. It is important for me to be attracted sexually to my partner. And that has been one of the harder things for me to talk about dating as well, because I never know when to talk about it. When is the right time to bring it up with someone that I'm dating, that I have certain preferences in the bedroom and I want to know what their preferences are.
Right. I mean, my little background, which I didn't cover, was I'm a Canadian boy that grew up in the Caribbean, and I've been back and forth my whole life. I met my ex-wife in the Caribbean, moved here with her, moved back there. We ended up breaking up, and I became single on a small island that has the population of a village. And I've been reintroducing myself to dating since. And of course, once I moved to Prince Edward Island for 2 years,
Another small village.
in a small village, but basically got stuck there over COVID. And what year is it now? 2022?
Yeah.
February 22 rolls around. I decide to actually leave, get to Toronto, and start dating in the big city. And one of the first people I meet, one of the first things she says or asks is what are your sexual preferences? What are you like in bed? I've been very open sexually my whole life. And I think it's just important to talk about this stuff. It was relatively novel to me to encounter somebody that wanted to have that conversation right at the start of communication, at the start of talking, before even meeting at all. Usually in my dating history and in my past, that becomes something that comes up eventually, or once you recognize that you enjoy each other's company or have a physical attraction to each other in person. I think that you and I are both sex positive people that have things that are important to us that ultimately we might miss or feel like we're settling on if they weren't in our lives. And that's not just sexual, obviously. It's a lot of things that have to do with emotional connection. But we also exist at a time in our lives at our age that we're in our late 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that while some people would say, I'm getting old, now it's time to settle, I think that both of us are at this age and we're single because we were refusing to settle.
Yeah. Big time.
And in that sense, our journeys, our individual journeys brought us to a very similar place, because ultimately I was looking very much for someone like you. And as you say, you were looking for someone very similar to me. And that's what's interesting. And that comes as a revelation from communication and introspection and learning on our journeys that we do. If that's not too
No, I agree with you.
meta.
Is it too meta? There was one time, like, I feel like I have been asked many, many times by people, why don't you just settle down with a nice guy? Like, why don't you, why are you being so picky? And that, saying that to someone, kind of invalidates their experiences dating, because while the person asking the question may have had the best of intentions asking because they found their partner right away, and then all of a sudden being like, oh, but you're single and you've been single for so long. Why are you being so picky? Why don't you just date someone that's nice? Why don't you just find someone who's nice? And it's just like, no, but that's not what dating is. And that's not what dating is for everyone. You were lucky to find someone early. That's great for you. But it's not that I'm being picky. I have certain things that are my non-negotiables. And I've learned that through dating people that have made that really bad for me. I've had really bad experiences. And so I said, I'm not going to have that again. I'm not going to change myself because someone tells me that they don't like the way I am. I'm never going to change for someone in that way. And there are other things that I have, like my non-negotiables are, my best friends are gay. I'm so in gay culture that I cannot stand for homophobia. Like if I was dating someone and they would make homophobic jokes about my gay friends, or no, just homophobic comments in general, I wouldn't feel comfortable bringing that guy out with my gay friends because I have no idea what they're going to say, and I would never do anything to make my friends feel uncomfortable. And I never would want to I don't know. I just feel like that's a bad mishmash. If you're homophobic, there's so many other reasons. There's lots of other things back there that I probably won't like anyways. There's that. And then there's just, I am, like you have mentioned, just very open about my sexuality. And if you have an issue with that, I'm not going to be shamed for it anymore. I have zero problem with it. I don't know why anyone else has a problem with it. I need someone who's also equally sex positive and sees the world in the same way, because I think I would go insane. So a nice guy, could be someone who is nice to everyone, but then not a fan of certain things. I couldn't be with that person. So then you're telling me that I should settle down with a nice guy and give up parts of myself. And I know that's not what the person is saying when they say that, but that's essentially what you're telling me when you say that, or I think anyone else, is that you're giving up a part of yourself, sometimes a big part of yourself, to be with someone. And yeah, so it's like, when do you choose to settle down but not settle? I think that with you that didn't happen, but like, it took me a really long time. It took me 38 years for me to finally know I want to settle down with you. And I don't think I found anyone else that I was able to actually say that with through and through.
And we've been together how long?
Not even 3 months.
Yeah. I think you raised a couple of really interesting points. Like, dating shouldn't be looked at something that is a reluctant leftover activity. Just because you're dating, it's not relative to being the kid on the playground that got picked last for softball. Some people are giving themselves the chance and the opportunity to meet people and to not only understand people, but themselves. Because a lot of time you don't get to understand a lot of things about yourself until you see yourself, through the eyes of someone else. Like you said, after having all of these kind of dud relationships and casual relationships, and then having to ask yourself, is it actually something that I did or I do? It doesn't matter if you do something right or wrong. We should always be introspective and to understand what is worth loving about ourselves. And I never watched Drag Race at all, but
no, you have watched Drag Race.
No, I hadn't. I hadn't, but with you and a couple of your wonderful friends, I've gotten to watch a few episodes, and RuPaul has, they nail it right on the head. If you can't love yourself, how the hell is anyone else going to love you? And they say that at the end of every episode.
Yeah.
And
well, how in the hell are you going to love anyone else? Same thing. If you can't love yourself, how are you going to love anyone else?
Yeah, I guess.
It's same.
Yeah. Okay. Well, same. You have to understand yourself, and you have to be able to love yourself. You have to understand the things that are worth hating about yourself, that you wouldn't like about yourself, that you wouldn't like to have in a partner dealing with you. And you don't learn that settling down with your high school sweetheart. And there's something that's really disjointed, I think, between the people of yesterday. And I'm not necessarily saying boomers, but we are children of a generation or of generations that had to work on their relationships and work for their relationships. And their biggest advice is, yes, you have to communicate, but the most important thing is just that you work on it and you don't give up. You don't give up on it for your kids. You don't give up on it for your family and for your bank accounts and your mortgages. And we exist in a time like we were raised being told we can do anything, which isn't necessarily true, but we've been given so many opportunities and so many privileges, and really dating should be considered one of them. And the more that you get to do it, the more that you get to experience, the more that you get to really know about yourself, and the more that you get to know about how to be a partner in a relationship and how to be with a partner in a relationship. And I think that in some cases, that's not everybody. Some people just can't be good in a relationship, I suppose. But ultimately, I don't think that we should be looking at people with, any kind of shame or anything like that. For people that choose to date until they find someone that they're not settling for, because it is that settling versus settling down. I think that, ideally you settle down when you're not settling anymore. A lot of people choose to settle because they've been fed this notion that it's not going to be great. It's not going to be perfect. It might not even be great. It's going to be something that you work on, and it's going to be the result of that.
Well, I think to a certain extent you do. I agree with you, but
it doesn't mean it's all easy. Like, it's not this even, our wonderful relationship isn't just some, you flick the switch and it's just lollipops and unicorns. You still have to have uncomfortable conversations.
Oh, don't I know?
Yeah. Communicating is never easy. Talking about yourself is never easy. Considering that you're wrong about something is the hardest thing for people to do. But in a relationship, you have to. When you meet somebody that's worth really swallowing that about yourself, I guess.
Yeah, that's when you really want to fight for it. I also think that there's just a lot of like insecurities that come about with dating that make it really hard. Like if you have insecurities about yourself, again, this is probably to the RuPaul statement, but I've seen it, and it probably happened with me as well, was I had these insecurities and someone would say something to me and I would not feel comfortable saying or standing up for myself because I was in my head about it. And looking back, I wish that I was able to say certain things to people, because I feel like not only would I be advocating for myself in that instance, but maybe it would have actually helped push through the casualness of it all into something a little bit more meaningful. But because I didn't know how to or didn't feel comfortable to do it, you kind of just, you don't say anything and then you lost souls. I really do think that dating in general, especially if you've been dating for at least a year online, you become really jaded to everything that's out there. And you'll either run at the first case of something like I find red flags a really interesting thing, because I remember at one point I was just like, there are certain things that I have that are red flags. If they say this in response to something that I said, if they act this way, that's a red flag. And then I remember sitting there at one point thinking, am I creating these red flags in my head? Like, just because one person did it, does that mean the other person that does it, is it coming from the same space? It can't be. So am I creating a red flag with someone doesn't mean it's going to be a red flag with someone else. I'm making excuses.
Yeah, circumstantially, like the only thing that come to mind when you're saying that is, well, let's say that someone's a racist homophobe.
Yes.
That's a red flag.
Yes.
But then it's like it comes up with somebody else that like, but they're such a nice guy and they're so rich. I mean, yeah, they're a racist homophobe, but
I mean, I didn't mean it in that way. That's
they
such
used
a
to get
superficial.
Beaten by some other by a gay person of a different race, and I just understand it now.
That is not the example that I was using at all.
But you know me, extremes, right?
Yeah. My God. Okay, and to give an example, say this is coming from me, right? Someone who may have made excuses and run away from things when I didn't want to deal with things. Let's just say a red flag for me would have been someone who, I don't want to be with someone who has no ambition in life. And then I meet someone who is a server, say. Not to say that doesn't have any ambition in life. I'm a server as well, but is that an excuse for me to say, well, maybe I want to be with someone who's rich, or maybe I want to be with someone who's like a manager or something like that? Like you kind of make these barriers for yourself is more what I was trying to say. Sometimes with red flags, what we call red flags, or maybe it's just because we haven't reflected. I think the problem with dating is that we don't spend enough time reflecting on the decisions that we make, the decisions that other people do to us, and what that means for us. And then you just kind of move on to the next person without actually thinking about the why. And then as a result, you're just like bouncing from person to person to person. And there isn't really a lot of thought into why. And you could say we're selfish, or we're only thinking about ourselves, and we're very individualistic. But I do think there's an element of that that's missing, because I would say that's probably what was missing from me the most. Like, I didn't really reflect. It's hard to reflect too when people are not really being honest with themselves either. And you get ghosting, and then you get gaslighting. You get delusion sometimes because people just don't want to deal with hard truths anymore.
Yeah, it's true. And to be fair, I encountered a lot of things where, I've tried to be cognizant and aware of those situations or those ways of behavior, I guess. And it's true. Like, so many people that are dating online, it's a ticking time clock. It's a time bomb. It's whatever a time thing is. There's only so long until you become so jaded with it, where you're just going to say, I've had enough of it. I'm going to delete these apps today.
And I only want to meet people in real life.
Yeah, I only want to meet people in the wild now, which, is a privilege and a luxury for most. But it's interesting because so many of the people you actually do come across in dating, or who are actively dating, are so jaded by dating. They have their guards up so high to protect themselves because they've been abused so much. They've been ghosted so many times. They've been gaslighted so many times, negged so many times. And sometimes you're talking to people that are so hurt that it's going to be so difficult to make that connection to begin with. And I do remember reading once that you're working against the numbers, right? Like, with attachment theory, it's like you're going to have X amount of people in society that are just good, secure, to be in relationship people. And then you have people that are either too anxious or too avoidant. And as you get older and on in years, all those secure people get snatched up, or they end up in secure relationships.
Yeah.
And what is left are a whole bunch of anxious and avoidant people that aren't good at being in secure relationships. And the numbers work against you. And I would totally buy that, because the older I've gotten, the more problematic dating has seemed to become. And I don't just mean because of the medium, the fact that it's online and that it's instant. You can talk to people that are much younger too, but as you get older, it's a little bit more slim pickings.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
And like my experience, when did you come to Toronto? In February? I met you. I swiped right to you in March.
Yep.
March, April, maybe.
It would have been March. We met in April, but throw in a good week or 10 days there that I was totally not ghosting you, but had COVID. And I just kind of avoided all the apps.
Yeah, until I was like, where did this guy go? He just stopped talking to me for like a week. I need to message him. This is the one thing that I told myself that I was going to do, because I know that I wasn't doing this, because I know that people say I can be avoidant and withdrawn. So I force myself now. If I'm talking to someone and I notice that they're not talking to me as much, they're not asking me as much questions, I can tell that their interest in me or their attention to me is waning. I will purposely ask more questions. And like, if they don't respond, then I will purposely message them the next day and be like, hey, how's it going? Just to make sure. I just want to make sure that either you're not ghosting me, maybe you are ghosting me. I just want to make you feel even worse that you're going to ghost me, because I'm just going to ask you one more time. Or if you're not ghosting me, in the case of you having COVID, maybe it was just like you got caught up in the middle of things and you just like completely forgot to message me, or you thought you messaged me. I'll be, hey, how's it going? Did you forget about me? What? Hi, me, I'm here. I'll do that just to make sure, so that if someone is ghosting me, I actually have given them a second chance. So now I force myself to do that. And I noticed that with you, and I forced myself to be like, just message him one more time.
Yeah. And you know what? I recognize that. And it's not that I feel like I was actively testing people, but in the things that I look for or have looked for, I look for give a damn, and I look for effort, because I know that I give effort in spades. And among those things that I noticed about you was just somebody that, I mean, before you even met me, you weren't really willing to let that conversation just die or go, because it was a great conversation. We'd had a great chat. We had a lot of reasons to make each other laugh over, text message on a dating app. And I did get caught up in a work event that I contracted COVID at, and the whole thing was just such a mess delegating stuff that I totally lost track of everything else I was doing personally. And then there was you're somebody that is willing to take something seriously enough to be able to put that time in and that effort and that consideration, that it's like what I say. I will say it every time. It's my favorite Wu-Tang lyric: real recognize real. And my real was recognizing your real. My strength was recognizing your strength. And that's what I really appreciate about you. Wu-Tang forever.
That's cute. I think it also, a lot of it has to do with like what you're looking for in a partner, or what you want out of a partnership. And I think a lot of stuff that I've talked about is just like, I feel like people are on go mode from the time out of the womb. You go to school, you go to post-secondary school, get your job, you meet someone, and then you propose to them, you get married, and then you have your 2.2 kids with a white picket fence and a house and a dog in the suburbs, because, there's space. And that's what people have been told, or that's the life that at least for me growing up, that was the life that we were told that we should have. And I think a lot of people follow that. And there's nothing wrong with following it, because some people really want to have kids, and they know that their biological clock is ticking. They know that they need to have this, they want this by this year, and then they can start doing that after. There's always like this goal for people. And then there's some people that, kind of, they see that. And I kind of feel like I've always been that way. You see that way of being, but it's like, do I really want to do this right now? Why do I want to do this? Does this work for me? I haven't really met anyone that I want to spend my life with. I haven't found anyone that I really want to have babies with. And a lot of people kind of assume that I don't want to have kids because I haven't gotten it yet. And I'm like, no, I haven't had kids because I haven't found that person. And so for me, I have always made personal growth and development my big thing in life. Like, I always want to try and be a better person. I want to really understand why things are happening. You can call me woke. You can call me a social justice warrior. You can call me whatever you want. I'm trying to understand why certain things are allowed and certain things aren't. How can I change myself to be better? And that's what I wanted out of a partner, was someone who can help push me be better, someone that I can help make better, someone who can compliment me. Like, when I'm not, Brene Brown has talked a lot about like relationships aren't 50-50. It's when I'm at 30%, can that person help me be at 70%? Or, can that person be more? And if they can't, we both have that conversation. You're like, listen, I'm at 30%. And then the other person says, I'm also at 20%. And then you kind of just like take your space. There's a lot of communication in that. And that's a different type of partnership and that's the type of partnership that I wanted. Then I just want to have kids and then settle down and have that house. And so when I met you, I saw that, or at least I saw that there was something really secure in this person. And maybe it was because you were in a marriage and now all of a sudden you were like newly single when I met you. Maybe that's what really worked for this whole thing. But you had this, like, even just your voice, and like, it's just like this calming, soothing presence. And I'm always this like super, like, I have ADD and I do this and I do that, and it's just like I've noticed that the things in you complement the things that I don't have, and that I really started to see what a partnership was. Like, you have the yin to my yang, and I feel like I do the same thing for you. And that ultimately is when I feel like I'm done dating, because I found that person. And the crazy thing is, and I know you've asked me to list all the things I want in a partner. And the most craziest thing is that like 90% of the things that I want in a partner is you. And like, it's just nuts. It's nuts that I feel like, and I said this to you when I first met you, like, I feel like I manifested you. I didn't manifest you because you were always there. You were always there living your life in some other part of the world, but I was destined to meet you. I feel like I manifested meeting you at that point in time because I was ready for you, and I think you were ready for me.
I mean, that's an endearing AF. No, but like, and I would feel the same, but I also think that the logical part of me would have to say that if you're patient enough, if you give yourself enough of a chance, and most importantly, if you put yourself out there, you can find that 90% of somebody that will put in the 70% when you're at your 30%. Because honestly, that speaks to me too. I think that's really what I was also looking for is, you know, someone that can recognize and step up when they need to. It should always be like a 50-50, but it can't always be a 50-50. So when I'm at 20%, if I'm dealing with some terrible family thing or some hard work thing, one thing I know that's a challenge, like going back to sexuality and dating, is that, you know, with sexuality, it's such a challenging thing to really address today too. There's still so many people that don't really understand their own sexuality. There's still so many people that are so shameful of sexuality or afraid of sexuality.
Then there's also, and I've had this conversation with women predominantly, where they're so nervous about bringing it up that they have a kink or that they like BDSM or aspects of kink, because they're scared that they're going to get shamed for it or outed for it. And maybe it's this also them that needs to be more comfortable with their kink and their body and their personhood, that they need to stop feeling so ashamed. But it is also really hard. It's hard to express yourself sexually and not, you're always thinking in the back of your head that you're going to get shamed or someone's going to say something or do something because they're not sex positive.
So it's another thing that's difficult. Like, you know, if you cared about someone else's music preference, you know, if I really liked hip hop and you really liked country and we weren't flexible with that, we're pretty rigid, then, you know, that's going to be
it have to be country.
I'm just saying as an example, like, okay, you like a specific kind of house music.
EDM.
Yeah. You like the broad spectrum of EDM, you know, and I rigidly can't accept it. Let's say that, right?
Yeah.
Like that would be something that's a problem for us. Obviously, I was at a point in life where I considered that I could settle on certain things. I would like to consider, you know, like, if someone had certain health problems, if someone had certain kinds of outlooks on life or a certain kind of like economic situation or something, like there's so many things I could be understanding of. Sexuality would be one of them. I've been under the impression that sexuality is something that you can learn about. Sexuality is something that you can teach somebody that you're with about you.
Yeah.
That does not always mean they're going to be comfortable about it. I've had partners that I reveal something about myself to that never got comfortable about those things. So it is something that's important to bring up. You know, like when we first met and we first started getting to know each other, and I was at your place and we were looking at stuff in your freezer, and you're like, oh, here's a Ziploc bag full of venison and it says kinky on it. Because the people I was with found out that I was kinky, so they named this deer Kinky after me. Now that's funny, but yeah, like the point
It
is,
could be a little much.
well, no, maybe like that's, well, whatever is a little much is,
Yeah.
who's to say? But the point is that if you're somebody that is kinky, how do you deal with and how do you navigate all of this insanity that's dating, on top of the fact that you have, not necessarily rigid qualifiers or things that you're looking for, like the green flags have to be that this person is kinky, or is it a red flag if they're not, or is it just a bonus? That's also a big thing to consider, because it's one of those things too that I consider myself a somewhat kinky person, but I ended up in a long-term relationship with somebody that was not.
Yeah, but do you think that might have caused...
Over time, I definitely had all sorts of remorse or issues with the fact that I couldn't express myself in that way, or that I turned out to be with somebody that was uncomfortable with my sexuality.
Yeah, so that only does things to you, though. Like, that's
a me thing. And,
but not being honest, I think it's also going back to them being honest with yourself. If you can't be honest with yourself, how can you be honest with anyone else? And then can you have like an honest relationship, like a true relationship, if you can't express yourself completely?
Yeah, exactly. So that's why, like, if you are dating, you have an opportunity, it's not always an obligation to yourself or to the other person. Sure, everyone should always be honest with each other. That can only go well.
I don't think a lot of people are honest with each other or know how to be honest with themselves. I can say that because that was me too, to an extent.
Sure. But that's the one thing that you can do yourself a solid and strive to learn that. But the more that you're honest with yourself and honest with other people, the more that you're going to get out of it, the more that you're going to learn, the more that you're going to be able to have a consensually good time with somebody on that same level.
When I say to be honest, like, it's also just, there's a lot of anxieties that are out there with dating. Everyone has anxieties. And I think it's also really important to remember that everyone has anxieties. And I've always tried to live in this world where I don't want to live with my anxiety. I want to try and work past it. I feel like there's always a way to overcome anxiety, but you also just have to be very okay with yourself and trust yourself and what you say and what you do. And if someone if someone lashes out at you for doing it or saying something, that's on them. That's not on you. I think one of the hardest things for me with dating was advocating for myself while also trying to make the other person feel comfortable. So for example, the last guy I was seeing before you talked so much. Every time I would see them, would just talk and talk and talk. And it got to the point where I was just like, I would just stop talking whenever I would see them, because there would be no point. Why? I would go over there and I'd say hi, and then I would hear a 20-minute story of their day with articulate details and stuff like that. And I would just be like, okay, well, when are we having sex? Because that was really why I came here. And it was really interesting. People were really confounded at the fact that I was having really, really good sex with someone that I had zero, or not zero, but we just weren't getting along with our clothes on. And then I allowed that behavior to continue. Like, it was just, I allowed myself to go there and just be quiet and just let him talk. Instead of being like, hey, like, what is happening here? Like, is there any space for me? And I brought it up a couple of times, but I actually realized I should have brought it up more. And then I kind of just allowed myself to be with this person for about a couple of months. in this weird space where I didn't feel comfortable saying something, and it gotten to the point where it was like so bad that I'm like, I can't say anything now. Like, what am I going to say? I'm going to tell him now that he talks too much. Like I let it go. How do you tell someone you talk so much? Also, rejection is another thing that people don't know how to deal with. So like, it just gets to this point where I think we're always living in our own heads when it comes to dating. And, a lot of it, and talking about sex and kink, and talking about what your red flags are, what your green flags are, if you're honest enough with it, is also trying to not live with that anxiety, if that makes sense. I hear it so much from my single friends that they're like, I don't know if I should say this to that person. I really want to say that to this person. Maybe I should do this. Just do it. Because that's what I did. If I didn't do it, I don't think I would have had you. Because when I met you, I was just like, this is someone. I'd be stupid. I'd be so stupid if I let this person go. Like I would actually kick myself, because I'm 38 years old now and I've met this person and I can't let this person go as well. And that's what made me put my serious pants on and my serious hat and my serious shoes on. I was like, I'm going to keep doing this until I have him.
Yeah, again, that's so cute. I'm just sitting over here blushing and laughing.
But it's true. Like, I mean, like, I really had to push myself. And then I ended up with you. And I feel like I ended up with the best prize in the whole wide world.
Yeah. Well, again, yeah, that's so sweet. But like, yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like I was seeing other people and I met you, and I just had to tell them sorry. Like I met somebody. I know that I had been meeting you, but it's when you recognize someone that just meets you on that level. And, you know, I don't even know if it's something you can quantify with a percentage. Like it's 90% of the things, or whatever percentage of the things. It's that I just, you know, I see you and my life is better with you in it. I know that the things that I want to do in life are better with you. And at that point, I'm done with everybody else, because everyone else is a waste of my time, if I'm being blunt. And now is my era, my age of Shelley, because this is somebody that I can just be myself with.
Yeah, and I don't want to play games.
No. Yeah, exactly.
I'm not here to play around with this anymore. I wanted this. This is what I'm going to have now for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. And yes, baby, this is rose-colored glasses in the early stages and the honeymoon phase of a relationship. And you've been sincere and honest with me from day one. You know, not everything is going to be comfortable and easy to hear. Not everything is going to be, what you're expecting. But if you have an open mind and an open heart, and you allow the person to be who they are, and allow their intention if you allow their intention to shine through, it's like you always say, like you'll say something to me that actually comes out of your mouth like hot garbage. No offense. But, it might actually come across pretty like crass or I don't know.
Do you have an example?
Oof. Like when you're trying to tell me that like you like me. And I just wish that people could see like how much you're laughing. Because it's true. Like sometimes you're trying to tell me something nice.
I try to say something real nice and it comes out like a hot mess.
It comes out like all these things that like are actually kind of sound like insults or something. But what?
I know we have to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I remember one thing. Yeah. I was talking with John about what it's like as an extrovert being in a relationship with someone.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it feels like you're giving up. I'm like, I have to think about someone else in a relationship.
Yeah, it sucks because you're giving up all your singleness and the things that you want to do when you're single.
No.
Well, that's what
It was just like I had my
across
whole
like.
life. I was doing all these things, and all of a sudden someone comes into it, and now I have to pay attention to them as well as all the things that are happening in my life. And it's weird and it's hard, and it's just like, what? But then there was this moment, and John and I had this conversation, and I'm convinced that extroverts have this issue in relationships. You realize that you had this life, and now someone is dating you, or you're dating someone. You want someone in your life, and it's just like, maybe I should stop looking at it from a selfish point of view as how is this affecting my life, but how is this person coming into my life and making it better? And maybe I want to spend more time with that than on the me part.
Yeah, which like
Did
ultimately.
I say better this time?
Well, it's a
Is
little.
it still a little?
Well, I mean,
It's not what you wanted. It's not how
no.
you wanted
Like
to hear it.
the whole way it came across originally was that like you hit it on the head with the selfish extrovert part. Because
That's all you focused on.
well, that's all I heard was just that.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
But as an example, it came across that, it's not fair to be in a relationship as an extrovert because everyone else, there's so many other people out there for me to be doing things with and hanging out with. All these people deserve me. And it's like, that's what's difficult about being in a relationship is because it locks you down. But then ultimately what you were trying to say is, but the thing about being a relationship is that it doesn't strip you of those qualities and those things that you get to enjoy in life. It's that you get to enjoy those things with somebody else, and that you get to be with somebody that those things become more enjoyable with. And when you finally got that across, I was like, oh my God, that's the sweetest thing.
And there was a sweet little, cute little girl inside this woman body.
Yeah, I know.
Do you want me to say that again? No. There is this cute little, sweet little girl inside this big woman body.
Big woman. But no, it's true. And I think that to sum things up, when you decide to close the door or open the door or however you want to look at it, when you decide to settle down and, stop settling, in my opinion, is when you meet somebody that makes your life and the things that you love about yourself and that you enjoy in your journey of living, when you meet somebody that makes all of that even more enjoyable and better, especially if it's in a healthy way, that's someone you settle down with. That's why I settled down with you. I choose you.
Aww. I choose you. No,
I choose you.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I choose you for so many reasons, but it's because I actually realize how much better my life is with someone else in it. I mean, you have definitely helped a lot. But to be fair, I think a lot of what I was missing was actually thinking about why. And that you make me think of the why so many times that like I feel like I would have grown up so much more had I thought about that earlier. So I think thinking about why you do things, why you acted in that way, why I acted in that way. Why did I say this then? Why did I think this? Why was I always doing this? Why were my behaviors and patterns like that? I think that has actually helped me so much. And that's why I choose you.
Yeah, and that's super cute.
And that's why I'm done dating. I hope.
Hey, you know what? Yeah, that's why I'm done. That's why I'm done dating too.
Well, I appreciate you coming and talking to me about this stuff.
No problem. Ask me if there's anything I want to plug.
Is there anything that you want to plug? How can we plug you? How can I shamelessly plug you, Jesse? Where can we find you on the interwebs?
Oh, well, I don't like making a big deal out of myself, but I recently published a website for your podcast, www.justoutofcuriosity.ca.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, you can check out Shelly's website. It's got, if you're listening, you're already listening on something, so I don't need to tell you how to listen to it. But check out the YouTube channel. Give it some love. Subscribe to YouTube.
Is there any other things that we can do for you, not for you, for me?
Oh, well, I also, not really. I direct a children's TV show. So if you want to go subscribe to Silly Robbie on YouTube, we could use a few more subscribers there as well. For anyone that doesn't know, Shelly edits all these things. She does all the work. So it's another reason to really appreciate you and the fact that you do put in a lot of effort to everything that you do. So thank you, Shelly. Thank you for having me on.
Aww.
Thank you for talking about something and being brave enough, having the courage to talk about something so important.
Thanks, Jesse.
You're welcome, Shelly.
Well, I guess we'll take off our headphones and cut this recording and go hang out now.
Yeah. Let's do that.
I would like to thank you for tuning in today. Download, leave a review, follow, and share this episode and the podcast with your friends, family, really whomever you like. You can find me on Just Curiosity Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and you can email me at justcuriositypod@gmail.com, as I would absolutely love to know your thoughts, insights, comments, and all those juicy stories. But most of all, stay curious, friends. I'm Shelly D, and this has been Just Out of Curiosity.